Our channel here over at SubStars. So this movie is coming out, and Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 2 came out a couple years ago on Hulu. It came and went. Nobody watched it because the time periods of these original movies came out and now it just reminds everyone how far America has fallen. Movies are not made in a vacuum, and the massive demographic change that has happened in 40 years means you used to be able to sell movies to an 80% white audience. It was is easy enough to market to just that audience, and now it's about 50%, and this other audience is an entirely different market. You're not able to make movies for one country anymore because America is not one country. It's just this commercial zone made up of these different markets. America used to be fun when it was a country where it was more closely aligned with, like, on the same page with some interests, when it was mostly a European American country. But diversity destroyed the ability to sell stories to mostly one audience. It made sales of those kind of things very difficult. So a 70s comedy just reminds everyone that America has become the third world, a violent hellhole that would have been a parody in 1978. Some people were pointing out, like, Pulp Fiction. There's a line about the $5 milkshake being, that must be an amazing milkshake, and it's not so funny when you look at inflation. You go, oh, this is just kind of sad now, and that's what it is. Weed humor doesn't work when the government is legalizing it. It went from counterculture to just video game stoner coomer culture. People know how untrustworthy the media is. If it's legal, it's not good. And I've had that conversation with potheads, and, like, deep down they know something is wrong when the government is backing off on it. Like, if the government wants to placate you with some sort of bread and circuses, and weed is probably one of the opiates of the masses. So comedy is going through this transition phase, and the white pill is that comedy is bouncing into a different direction because it has to be something refreshing, insightful. Someone pointed out it's got to have a change of perspective, to force you to see something out of the ordinary that's not in the mainstream. So by definition, it means it can't be mainstream approved talking points. And there's another article floating around on, they're talking about Fox compared to all the other networks, and Greg Gutfeld has got some kind of late night show that's doing better than the Jimmy Kimmels and all these other late night shows, which is just openly globalist cancer, or why Fox is beating the more obvious globalist propaganda. But it's really all crap when you look at Fox to any of the other networks. It's just that Fox is less crap than the other crap. Where the modern conservatives are like pro-gay marriage and anal sex values and trans surgeries, but only with the parents' approval, because those are modern conservative values. That's how far the window has shifted to the left. There's nobody in the mainstream who is based at all. It's all just globalist propaganda. It's like people don't really know they're in a matrix, but they know it when they leave it. The difference was when you go to Odyssey live streams, and on those kind of alt media, people are slaughtering sacred cows, and they're actively hunting for new cows to go after. It's why you can go back and watch the slow shift in comedy from before cancel culture accelerated, and then the comics who made their money with Sarah Silverman with the N-word song. I think that was in the Jesus is Magic. I mean, you go back and watch this stuff after putting on the They Live sunglasses, and it's just, I mean, you see how evil these people are. Or the Sacha Baron Cohens with, I forget, that Ali G character, or Amy Schumer, and then after they made their millions, they pull the ladder up after them. There's a speech where Cohen is talking to some ADL function, and he's saying that comedy must never go after his tribe. That's an amazing example of lack of self-awareness. That's how deep in an echo chamber left-wingers in Hollywood is. After Silverman made $100 million being famous for just being the cute skinny chick with big boobs who was saying a bunch of racial epithets and slurs, she realizes that what she did is wrong, and that new comics should just be canceled if they try to be a little bit edgy, because the control of comedy, I guess, was getting away from them, so they had to shut these things down. Anyway, so the left is left with politically correct comedy, which is about Christians, Republicans, and white people in general. And obviously, it's just not finding a market. But what this has done is opened up a branch of right-wing, unpolitically correct comedy to fill the void, which then the left tries to shut down the shows because they don't want other people to hear what someone has to say. But it's going to find a way because there's no future in mainstream safe shows or movies. It's just not funny. There's probably an awakening for people who are. I imagine some guy sitting in an audience and there's some obese lesbian dressed as a man up on stage talking about white Christian male Nazi Trump supporters for the 1,000th time, or maybe their vagina. It's like they're just obsessed with it, and the audience member is thinking, yeah, we paid $180 for these tickets, and it's just the stupidest thing they've ever heard. It's just going to click in their mind that this is just too stupid to continue. And the other factor is this is year 8 of the Trump reaction political. I don't know what you want to call it. Trump reaction politics is this phase of Trump derangement syndrome. So any narrative or show or stand-up that continues to respond to something that's been done to death is just not going to get an audience. The funnier stuff would be comics setting up a standard liberal joke about immigrants being like Anne Frank, and then subverting expectations by saying that, well, you'd turn her in also, officer, she's up in the attic. Jokes that are actually politically incorrect are funny because they're so unexpected. Jokes about helping to deport Mexicans or George Floyd, the whole trans kid agenda, or blue-haired SJW pussies and slacktivism. Yeah, those are topical jokes, and they have a limited window, but they're ripe fruit on the tree waiting to be picked. Jokes that would get you arrested in Europe are going to be the best. You've got a mainstream limited window, and the right is controlled by these types of media, in quotes, Gateway Pundit, Post-Millennial, Daily Wire, PragerU, Blaze, Rebel, Breitbart, and they're the mainstream. And once you go outside that into the politically incorrect waters, you have both the left and the right wing telling you, oh no, you can't say certain words or mention certain things. And it's weird to think we're in the day where words hold magic power, and you see both the right and the left kind of recoil back in horror when somebody even quotes some politically incorrect word or phrase. It's absolutely bizarre. And then you see the left and the right in the mainstream. Well, they're really on one side, and you're on the other side, and you're looking to the left at them. And anyone who breaks out is the woke right or Nazis or whatever psyop glow job they're currently pushing to try to get control over this new right wing. So anyway, Cheech and Chong's first movie was in '78, and those movies were dumb for the time. They were kids' movies that were designed to be watched on like on almost on these crappy TVs in living rooms in the early '80s, and they were they were lowbrow humor, but it worked because America wasn't the crude, filthy characters that they were making a parody of. It was a juxtaposition between what was kind of a nice country at the time, but now America is settling firmly into third world status. So seeing these dirty, thieving potheads be degenerate, it just doesn't work when you look around and you go, oh, that's half the country. That's why it's such a hellhole. You can look at the streets that they were filming in LA, and it's homeless tent cities now. In fact, much of California is. The juxtaposition was part of the humor, but Cheech and Chong was as sort of a glance into the third world mentality in parts of the city that had turned into a third world, but a Hollywood charming version. And the thing I'm trying to convey is that what Hollywood envisioned as seedy in 1978 is a relatively nice area because it's not full of homeless tent cities dealing drugs and bodies that are OD'd and sit there for a day because the police are just not bothered to come pick up a body, which literally happened in San Francisco. There was a body in front of somebody's driveway for a full day. The thing is, that's just too much of America, and it's not funny. The concept of rebellion or subversive humor only works when there's a surrounding, well-ordered civilization. Now half of America is on welfare that the other half pays for. And in a movie like this image here about some kind of drug addicted whatever, it's not funny when you see people like these fentanyl cities and people zombies, you know. I mean, it's Weimar. It's more Weimar than Weimar. If you want to see how different America was in just 45 years, the two main characters in the movie are renting a small house and they have a white neighbor in Los Angeles, and they're supposed to be poor because they spend their money on drugs. And you know, like you think about Los Angeles now, you're like, that none of that makes sense. If you said it today, it would have to be focused on the hilarious hijinks of Cheech and Chong in their homeless tent cities where they're selling fent in the welfare line and have got to smuggle coke over the border and avoid being robbed by the cartels or the coyotes raping children. The punchline would be that they're leaving one third world broken down shithole across the border and it looks exactly the same. Then they get robbed by cartel gangs of their coke and have to mix sugar with fentanyl and sell it to their Hollywood Epstein Island buyers. And it causes massive overdoses in Hollywood where half the town George Floyds themselves. So suddenly Cheech and Chong are in the movie business and become the new Weinsteins, where they make a Running Man reality show, but for real, and hide the actual violent deaths from the audience. You know, there actually could be some dark humor about the Maria Abramovic side of Hollywood. The what was that Tom Cruise movie, Eyes Wide Shut, where there are underage. You know, Kubrick, good for him. The guy really he tried to put something out there where there are underage dead hookers everywhere you turn. But obviously, you're not going to see Hollywood do films about the Epstein Island adventures because they're like cockroaches. They don't like the light on them. You could make funny movies today, but it would take balls to make the first few to kind of break people into it. The girl who was in Eurotrip just passed the other day at 39, so you could redo Eurotrip current year, and I'd love to be able to write the script for that. The gang has to dodge grooming gangs, trucks of peace driving through crowds, knife fights in the streets, attempted kidnappings, various rape scenes against both sexes. It would have to be a dark comedy and would definitely be illegal in Europe. The characters, Cheech and Chong, are not funny because they're the standard type of low-life criminals that have destroyed California and, I mean, America in general. They're parasites. They only work when they're the rare juxtaposition to a functioning society. It's not funny where their standard of behavior becomes the new standard. It's like, oh, you just turned what was a first world into the third world. And you look around California or Texas, Nevada, or parts of Oregon or Washington, and it's like it wasn't directly their fault. It's just this whole big system of a country that has you know, anyone can come in and turn it into the country they left. It's like none of the humor works anymore. There's a scene where Chong is annoying his white neighbor with his motorcycle, which wouldn't make sense today because his neighbor is going to be people exactly like him in these, you know, rundown, graffitied houses with drive-bys and OD victims all over the place. It's not funny when it's actually a country, and in 1978, it really wasn't. The thing is, movies are not made in a vacuum, which is a lesson that Hollywood is learning when their diversity movies keep bombing because we've had years of, you know, George Floyd's Summer of Love, Soros-funded black communist riot, domestic terrorist riots, burning down buildings, sometimes with people in them. And I think they've assassinated 50 people. So the thing is, people don't want to go to the theater and go see this diversity on screen, which is why so many movies across the board and across genres have been bombing. So this, you know, this is going to come and go. It's just not, it just doesn't make sense. It just reminds people that America used to be kind of cool and now it's a shithole. The same with Mel Brooks movies. They're not exactly political. Some parts are politically incorrect, but it's more anachronistic. That was just such a radically different country, and people are going to watch these movies and go, you know, they would kill to go back to that 1978 America with those demographics when it was still a functioning country. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys all next episode.